Thank you for allowing me to speak today about a unique non-verbal research tool, the World Game. My name is Marion van de Coolwijk. I'm born and raised in Amsterdam, Holland, and I'm a teacher specialized in reading and learning and behavior problems. And also I'm a writer of more than 200 children and adult books and developer and publisher of learning methods. For more than 20 years, I teach Dutch educational professionals in working with the World Game. The World Game is such a wonderful tool to gain insight into the learning capacities and the way of information processing of children in a non-verbal way. And today I want to tell you more about the history of the material and why it's important for the education of all children, but especially for the highly gifted children. The World Game is a Dutch instrument. It provides insight into the inner world of the child, and it's a tool for expressing the relationship between the child and their world. It's an addition to a comprehensive educational test, and it's completely non-verbal, so no speak or writing abilities are needed. It benefits the highly gifted children who fail at school or are not being recognized. School wants children to process their information verbally, in order, following procedures, converging, only one answer is right, and from the core with focus on analysis and details. But the visual spatial brain of the highly gifted children processes information from the whole. They think fast and associative, focused on similarities and connections, and most of all, they think divergently. A simple test at school in Holland is the question, which word doesn't belong in this row? Airplane, bus, car or bicycle? That's a normal question in the test in Holland. And I would answer the bicycle because there's no motor in it. But school wants to hear the airplane because that's an airplane is flying and the other three aren't. I don't get it. It's very frustrating to be tested and taught in a converging, verbal way. Many children lose motivation to learn that way or don't find connection with the learning system. They don't get it, withdraw, or even think they are stupid. In the 90s, my eldest son completely failed at school. Reading, writing, math, his grades were terrible. His motivation was dropped to 0, and he was very unhappy at school. At the age of 10, he once said to me, "I don't belong in this world, Mom. I'm stupid. I might as well be dead." My heart was bleeding because he was very smart, sensitive boy, interested in people, in nature, in politics, in the universe. His only problem was that he did not understand the education system because of his visual spatial way of thinking and the lack of verbal skills. His teacher did not believe he was smart because his bad grades. And at my request, he was tested with the World Game because the non-verbal character and the short time it takes to test. And it turned out to score very high on cognition and on frustration. And only then the teacher was willing to test him officially with the WISC test. And he scored 135 and 137. Only then the teacher was convinced. So the World Game was the beginning of a process in which my son learned to use his visual abilities in the school system. And now he's 32 years old and a great art director full of self-confidence. In just 10 minutes, the World Game test can make a difference in children's life. It's an important starting point for teachers, for parents also. And it also prevents wrong diagnoses such as dyslexia, ASD and ADHD, because visual spatial thinkers often cope with similar learning problems. Teachers must be aware of this because with the right help and guidance, these starting problems disappear. The World Game consists of 160 small wooden elements from people's living environment and subdivided in 7 different categories: houses, vehicles, people, trees, animals, fencing and signs, and building material. The World Game is a mode of expression and a representation of the way in which a child organizes their inner world and outer world. The examination is conducted individually in a calm setting on a table, and the child is requested to build a village. There will be no talking during the building process. Firstly, the acting itself is studied, the handling on the material. Additionally, the end product, a village, provides an insight into the development of the child. The researcher observes and makes notes. When the village is finished, often between 5 and 15 minutes, the child is allowed to explain what he has built, and the researcher listens and makes notes. Afterwards, the factual examination has ended. Evaluation, the child's build happens at the end using a score sheet. The results that, together with other research data, emerge are very valuable for parents, teachers, and the child itself. The world game is always used as an additional component in an educational research in combination with previously acquired research data. Until this day, the world game material is used by many education experts as a research tool where 3 fixed aspects are considered every time. First, the pedagogical aspect. How does the child handle and treat their world? Is there a visual, spatial, or verbal preference in information processing? Or is there a balance? And second, the social-emotional aspect. How does the child experience their world? Is there any question of insecureness? Are there communication problems, anger problems, or even protest issues? And third, the cognitive aspect. How does the child explore their world around them? The child's cognitive capacities are based on the development phases, and there is a rubric in giftedness, which is in research now with the Dutch Radboud University and in cooperation with the Gifted Institute Denmark, Development Center, and CREASE, the Nuses Center. The world game material has a long scientific history. In 1911, so more than 100 years ago, H.G. Wells published a book with the name Floor Games. In it, he describes how he stimulated the imagination and inventiveness of his son by building cities together out of wooden toy elements. Not only did his son incorporate personal elements into what he built, but his future capabilities also emerged. And his book was read by both Margaret Lowenfeld and Melanie Klein. Margaret Lowenfeld was a British pioneer of child psychology and play therapy, and Melanie Klein was an Austrian-British psychoanalyst. She used the game material as a base for psychoanalytic treatment of children, as a way of investigation the psychological aspect of how does a person experience their world more closely. Charlotte Bühler, a German developmental psychologist at the University of Vienna, decided in 1936 to further investigate the treatment of the world game material and focused on the development of the child and worked on the standardization of the game. And in that same year, the world game reached the Netherlands. For years, the game was used in a well-known school, the Werkplaats of Kees Boeke, a Socratic school based on the principles of Montessori, Maria Montessori. I like that very much because I am a Montessori teacher. The Dutch princesses and former Queen Beatrix were students there. In 1947, Kamp, doctor and psychiatrist at the University of Utrecht, searched for norms in the form of age criteria. Which manner of handling the material has preference at a certain age? And in other words, how does a toddler build and how does an 8-year-old child build? How does a 12-year-old child build? And also Maria Krabbe had a great influence on the development of the world game. She was a Dutch speech therapist in the 40s of the last century. and the first Dutch pioneer in the field of treatment of children with severe reading and language problems. She published experiences about children with reading and linguistic barriers, which she called beelddenken, translated in English as visual spatial thinkers. She was a pioneer and mentioned the name beelddenken, visual spatial thinker, for the first time, I think, in science. And she did a lot of research, and in 1951 she wrote a book about visual thinking and word blindness. So to conclude, the period between the 1900 and 1950, several people from different disciplines used the world game material as a research tool. And despite the very different starting points, there are also many similarities to be found. Four categories emerged over and over. First, the mental age, and second, the character structure of the person who's building. Third, the cultural pattern, and four, the inner world of the child. Nel Ooyeman, she was a pedagogue and teacher at the University of Groningen, was the founder of the world game as it is used now by hundreds of educational professionals in the Netherlands. In 1955, she became aware of the world game from Kamp's publication and combined it with Maria Krabbe's research about visual thinking. Ooyeman saw the world game as a research tool in education, a way to prevent problems and an action plan for learning guidance. In the years that followed, because of his research and practical experience in Holland and Belgium, a lot of attention was paid to the standardization of and the design of the world game. Ooyeman made a connection between the development of the 5 to 12 years old child's handling of the world game material and the handling of letter and numbers in the educational learning process. And this all resulted in a first manual for observation, operation and assessment of the end product of the world game. I worked as a teacher for more than 20 years before I met Nel Ooyeman in the 90s. Because of my son's problems at school, I read about the work of the world game. As a teacher and as a mother, I was very interested, and in 1998 I graduated from Ooyeman in working with the world game. And I asked her why I, as a teacher, did not know anything about visual and verbal processing information and about the world game, the instrument, non-verbal instrument. And she said, "Oh, my dear, education and science don't mix." And I think it's still so. So I promised Ooyeman then, who was already in her 80s, to continue her work and founded Instituut Kind in Beeld. And I wanted to inform teachers and parents to prevent what happened with my son. Because of my network in the publishing world, I arranged a Page-Sides interview with Ooyeman on the front page of the Telegraph, the largest newspaper in the Netherlands, and also published a book for teachers about the world game and visual thinking. So slowly with the book and my trainings, the work with the world game became more well known. After Nel Ooyeman's death in 2003, I continued to train professionals in working with the world game. So nowadays, the world game is used by many teachers, psychologists, highly gifted specialists and child therapists as a non-verbal addition in guiding and testing children. Highly gifted children especially benefit. In Holland, many specialists in high giftedness use the world game in their guidance and testing because it shows an indication of the cognitive level of the child in a non-verbal way. So no reading, no speaking, writing or listening is necessary. In contrast to verbal tests like the WISC or the RAKIT, the Dutch intelligence test. And also not Dutch speaking students can be tested this way. A lot of empirical material has been collected during the last 15 years in Holland for further scientific studies. In 2016, Professor Evelyn Kroesberger, professor at the Radboud University in Nijmegen, Holland, conducted a 2-year Dutch study to investigate how visual and verbal thinking relates to academic performance, in which the World Game was included. The results of this study are published in national and international scientific journals. Evelyn states that one of the major problems regarding this topic is that it's very difficult to measure visual thinking in children. In educational practice, the World Game is used for this goal, as well as social-emotional aspects and cognitive level, but this test has not been validated yet. The plans collecting data in Denmark are thus highly needed to support this line of research. Evelyn is highly interested in collaborating in a study to find the relationship between children's scores on the World Game and other aspects of verbal and visual thinking, as well as academic performance. The planned data collection could be very nice an opportunity to collaborate on such a project, and she will support this project as much as she can. In that same year, 2016, a Dutch conference was organized about high giftedness by the SLO, the Dutch Center of Expertise Curriculum Developments, and both Linda Silverman and I were keynote speakers. And I spoke about the World Game, and Linda was very interested in this non-verbal testing tool. And after a few weeks, when she contacted me, Crit Thorn, president of the Gifted Institute, was with Linda at that time, and she was also interested. So I invited Crit to come to my Dutch course because she understands Dutch, and she graduated last spring, in that spring, 2017. It was 2017, Crit. And now she works with the World Game and has already tested hundreds, I think over 1,000 children with the World Game. The World Game test is the start of a process. It leads to questions and possible hypotheses, broadens dialogue with parents, teachers, and it is a bridge to parents, teachers, and child. It's the basis for effective follow-up steps. So about the rubric of giftedness, with the help of Johnny Rasmussen and Crit Thorn from the Gifted Institute, and Professor Evelyn Kroesberger from the University, Radboud University in Nijmegen, Holland. There is an observation list for giftedness, is developed and is being tested since 2020. This rubric can be used as a supplement to the nonverbal identification of cognitive abilities in situations that regular IQ tests due to communication or cultural problems cannot be taken. The Dutch World Game training is offered several times a year in the Netherlands, but there's also an English language training we organized. For more information and dates, you can see the website. In 2018, an international group of colleagues from the United States of America, Canada, Denmark, and Greece joined Linda Silverman in Denmark for training and certification in the World Game. A collaboration started in collecting data to support the study in the Netherlands and Denmark to find a relationship between children's scores on the World Game and other aspects of verbal and visual thinking, as well as academic performance. In 2020, the Radboud University, Nijmegen, Holland, started an international scientific study called Characteristics of Giftedness, a theoretical background for assessing children with the World Game, by Professor Dr. Evelyn Kroesberger. And the first exploratory phase in the spring showed sufficient confirmation to continue and ultimately to arrive at a standardized identification of giftedness with the World Game. And the study is currently in swing. So nowadays the World Game is used by many special teachers, psychologists, high gifted specialists and child therapists as a non-verbal addition in guiding children. If you are interested in working with the World Game, please sign up or send us an email, and we might see each other soon at one of the following training courses. Bye and thank you.